Hi, I'm Ted. Welcome to my shop. I'm a Shopsmith guy. I've had one since 1985. I've upgraded it from a Mark V to a 510 to a 520 and then put on the Power Pro. But one of the things I like about it the most is the versatility. But as a saw, the table, even though the 520 table is probably over 2 times larger than the original Mark V, it's still not all that large if you had like a big table saw system. And if you have a Crosscut Sled, as I do, one of the problems with it is when you reach across and took the sled out full to get your full cut, depending on not the size of your sled, because the back of the sled where the fence is, that's going to be the same on any of them relative to the blade. So one of my problems is being old and being a disabled vet, I have to worry about my balance, and working around saws and these systems, I have to be extremely careful. So I made the sled. I was on YouTube and I saw this Crosscut Sled by Nick Ferry. I'll mention it again later probably. But the title of it on YouTube is Make a Table Saw Crosscut / miter saw combo. And I really like mine. But one of the problems, again, is my sled is not as deep as it could be. If it were deeper, this problem would even be compounded. So what I'm going to develop is a outfeed table for my 520 table on my Shopsmith. But unfortunately, the outfeed extensions that Shopsmith have are wider than the miter slots, and they don't have miter slots in them. And of course, you have slots on your sled, which means if you're trying to do an outfeed, it'll either have to ride on the outfeed table, which is okay, I suppose, or in between them or in slots themselves. So I'm going to make a outfeed table approximately 7 inches wide by maybe 24 inches long, and we'll see how that works out. First of all, though, I'll show you what I mean by the problem with the balance and the sled coming across and tipping forward off the blade, which is not a good situation. Okay, so here's what I'm talking about. The sled, of course, slides really nice if you build it right. But as it comes out at the final part of the cut, just as you get in the end of it, it has a tendency to be right on the fulcrum, which makes it kind of unsafe. If it comes out and it goes across, hits the blade. So what I need on my Shopsmith, obviously, is an outfeed table that will attach off of here and come out. So that's what we're going to do. So we'll kind of go through the design process and then the build process. Even if you don't have a Shopsmith, but you have a table saw, a lot of these DeWalt systems that are going to use, or Sears, whatever it is, Craftsman, this is still a good idea to make sure that as your sled comes out, that it's safe. It's not going to flop around on you. So let's see what we're going to do. This is my Shopsmith 520, and I've made a crosscut sled, which I'll go to a little bit later, tell you where to get the plans for it if you'd like. One of the problems with the crosscut sleds, however, especially on a table, the blades is there. Now if you want to go out and make a full cut, like right there, but before you get there, as you can see, it's kind of a little bit precarious. Now once you get out this far, the outfeed table will work, but if you see, it's just barely on there. And again, it doesn't pick it up early enough. So I'm going to design a outfeed table that I can mount on here like I've mounted the Shopsmith outfeed table. Which basically sticks in much further and will pick up the crosscut sled prior to it getting to that. It'll hit right about there, which is, you can see it's still fairly solid. Even at this point it's still solid, but once you get out to this point, it's become unstable, and I don't consider it safe. So, okay, so I've got it in the drill press configuration. I put on this aftermarket chuck, which is big. I've got a 1-inch Forstner bit. I've got a piece of plywood underneath it. I've got the set on it, so I'm going to go just beyond the bottom of this thing and barely into the plywood, which is really what you want to do. So let's get started. Okay, so ready. So on and confirm. Okay, we bottomed. So we'll stop this monster, maybe. Remove the clamps. And we've got a nice 1-inch hole. Now it's time to do the second one. Set it up. That's where we want to be, pretty much. Put the clamps back on. Try and make sure this board stays flat against that piece of plywood. And turn it back on and do it again. And we're through. And stop. So I'm going to go ahead and take this off and check it, make sure that the tube fits. It should, but nothing's guaranteed. But this is woodworking, so precision is not always the key word here. So we'll get back in a minute. Now I could use the Shopsmith to do this, but this is really a more precise way to do it. So it's locked down. And still it moved, I do believe it did, yeah. Don't know why, but it did. It's locked down pretty firm. But that's the bottom. But that does bother me. So maybe I should be using the Shopsmith, but let's give it another shot here. Now, if necessary, the neat thing about the Shopsmith too is I'm really going to lock this down as tight as I can get it, and we'll see what happens this time. Okay, that's not a square cut either. So, but it is square on the part that I need. So I'm not going to worry about it. I think this is what happens when you get a discount system. I should have gone with DeWalt or something like that. So. Okay, hopefully you can understand me. So we're now locked into this position, and we're going to set this for sanding. So to go to this menu, we're going to go to the speed chart, confirm that.
thickness grinding, table saw, strip sanding, square saw, shaking, routing, lace turning, joiner, drum sanding, drilling, diff sanding, sanding confirmed. Sled and conical, confirmed. Hardwood, confirmed. The unit about a 60, so we're going to get 1450 RPM. I've got this set up on the tube. I know what it looks like. Pencil mark, and I still got some right down here, so a little ways to go. Okay, we're there. These are still flat. So I've got a surface that's common to the hole. And we'll take a look and see what those dimensions are in a minute. Get rid of all this safety stuff.
Okay, I've got them paired up, and I opened up the, I took a dowel and split it and put some 60 grit sandpaper in it and went through with a drill, and I opened them up so they slide easily now. And what I'll do next is I'll probably drill a hole and then thread it so I can put a lock in there so I can secure them once they're set, because they're going to be 7 inches apart basically. Really won't look like that much when you do it, so they're going to be about that far apart, so they're pretty close yet. But I just need a bolt or a screw on one of them in the front and the back to secure them on the rail, so once it's set they don't move. And then the 7 inches allows, less than 7 inches allows for the miter bars on the sled to go past them without any problem. Then that 7-inch board will give me all the security I need to make sure that the sled doesn't try and tip down once it gets past a certain point of the falcon bot, actually on the center of that board where the weight starts lifting up the back. Don't want to do that. And unfortunately the Shopsmith extension tables are too wide, or they maybe should have been wider with the miter slots in them to allow you to extend your sleds, but I don't think they were thinking sleds. So we'll go from there. Okay, so I cut a 3/4 inch piece of birch, 7 inches by 24, and square the line. I used the factory cut side just to be sure. I had Shopsmith set back up on the saw system, And I'm going to probably use Elmer's glue and let it really set good, and then put the screws in later, and then drill the holes for the set screws. Okay, so here's the results. Now I haven't put the screws in yet, but in retrospect, make the holes 1 1/16 inch. I ended up having to sand them out to that. I just took a dowel, made a split in it, and used some number 60. So I've got the front one's clamped, but the tubes move easily through them now. And hopefully you can see I've got this rod coming out, and there's a gap there, and there's a gap on the other side. So it's a little bit about 6 3/4 I think it was that I ended up with, or 6 7/8. Piece of birch and the legs. And now when I use my sled, it can come out and I don't have to worry about it tipping on me. Now you can finite these tubes by screwing them in, screwing them out, until you're perfect. I just stick them out, spread them out a little bit until I get it where I want it. And it works out great. So I will wax, or I'll probably use poly on this birch. I'll put the screws in after a while, maybe tomorrow, after the glue's had a good chance to set. I hope this works for you. I know the sleds are, what I'll do is I'll put the sled on it later, not tonight. I'm worked out. But anyway, it worked out really good. I'm happy with it. And we'll try it out tomorrow and see just how good it works. Okay, so I've got the sled mounted on a Shopsmith. Now this sled I made. I got the idea by watching a YouTube video by Nick Ferry, F-E-R-R-Y, and the title of that is Make a Table Saw Crosscut / Miter Saw Combo. And what he did was he has these different sections, and we put in the T-tracks, and this centerpiece is like one piece, but you bring your saw up for 0 clearance. And you can just take these 6 screws out and replace it when you're going to do something different with it, or if you have a wider blade, or if you've kind of worn it out where it's not working too well anymore. I added this piece right here onto the track, and I will put measuring tapes on it. This being 0, that's a set screw to lock it in because it can slide, as you can imagine. And we have this T-track here as well. So anyway, what we're looking at here now is I'll move the camera around. I've got the extension out. It's set. Oh, you know what? I can probably just do it from here. The nice thing about the sleds are they're really handy, but when you get cutting back to the back end of this thing, the sled over the blade is way out. And so you have this sled coming out, and it has a tendency sometimes to tilt. This way, it's supported. I didn't get the blocks on the front moved exactly like I'm like 1 centimeter off of keeping it on 0. So what it's done is it's kind of put it in a bind out here. Excuse me, which will not allow me to push it off this thing either. So, but typically you only come out maybe this far. But it's, look how far off the bag of the table it is when it comes out. So you don't have to worry about it tilting down on you. So that's what it looks like. It's set up with the legs out here on a short rod or tube, and I'm happy with it. That will satisfy a need. I did notice when I was putting this together that if you're doing it for a Shopsmith, I'm going to change the dimension on these blocks. They need to be from the center of the hole up. You need to add about 1/8 of an inch. On this end anyway. This end it doesn't really matter, but the ones up front, they were just a little bit short. Again, from the center of the hole facing up to the piece of birch plywood. It just barely has room to get up there, but if I had to lower the blade much further or raise the table much higher, I would have a problem with it. So anyway, that's about it. thanks for watching. Oh, one other thing. If you're a Shopsmith enthusiast, I've been getting a lot of tips from my Shopsmith, even though I've had it since 1985. I've been getting a lot of tips from a gentleman, and his YouTube channel is My Growth Rings with Mark, and it's his name is Mark Wood, and he has a ton of videos showing how to service your Shopsmith and a lot of tips on how to tune it up, get it working right, and keep it running fine for you. So I'll put this in. I'll put it on the screen here for you when I process this thing. So thanks for watching. Have a good day. Stay safe. And that's it for now. So I've done a little design work here, so you can see the shelf itself is a 6 3/4 by 24 inch 3/4 inch piece of plywood. The blocks I used, and of course this can differ if you want, is a 2 by 3 by 1 3/4 inch piece of oak. Well, the 2 by 3, the 1 16th inch diameter hole should be cut 1 3/4 inches down from the surface common to the bottom of the plywood. That gives you a 2.5 inch distance from the top of the plywood down to the tube. And in retrospect, instead of doing those like I did, making those blocks, I think I would cut the blocks first to be precise, and then set up the drill press where I'm making those holes exactly the same in each block, and possibly marking one side to know if the hole is basically perfectly in the center or if it's off to one side or another. As long as you mark the side, one side or the other, common to the fence, then when you put those in, then you can use a square on a precise cut block, and you won't be off by 1 or 2 millimeters like I was, which took me some time to kind of figure that one out. Make it a lot easier. So anyway, you can stop this and look at it if you want, or basically these dimensions are just basically what I use, and you don't have to hold them true, but I think they're pretty accurate.